Hello, Internet. It's the Pennsylvania Hitman coming to you from the PaHitman studios in Erie, Pennsylvania. And I'm here to talk to you about my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts experience. All right. I've been putting this one off for a little bit because it's going to be a long video because I've been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts since 1999. And, telling the story from beginning to end is going to bring out some, I'm going to have to tell you about some memories that really anger me, that really piss me off. So there's a lot of things that happened to me since 1999, going through my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts career that definitely really pissed me off. And lots of people fucking hosed me over and did some dirty shit to me. So you're gonna have to hear about that. Like if you listen to my boxing experience story on YouTube, you think those stories were crazy. It's nothing like what I'm about to tell you in this video. It's nuts. So I started this road in 1999. I was boxing at this place called the Lower East Side Federation, Lower East Side Fighting Eagles, doing a lot of boxing. And, it was 1999, so the UFC was getting pretty popular. It was still illegal in all the states, but they were doing it on Indian reservations. They were coming up with ways to do it, and it was pretty popular. I was, getting into a lot of street fights then, and I was really focused on trying to become the best street fighter possible. It might sound weird to a lot of people, but I was really into fighting, and I wanted to just be the best street fighter I could possibly be. So I was getting in tons of fights. I was almost getting bored. Like, I was beating everybody up. Every weekend, I was whooping ass. Like, it was getting to the point to where I was getting bored. It was getting almost too easy to beat people up. Big guys, small guys, I was beating everybody up. Like, I was getting bored. I needed something to challenge me more when it came to fighting. It was just like, I was just getting bored. It was just too easy to beat everybody up. So there was these two girls that boxed at the Lower East Side, and that's like the first two girls that ever boxed at this gym. This gym was known for really tough, badass dudes. You'd get kicked out of the gym if you got knocked out in a fight. It was known that you had to be a tough guy to box at this gym. There was just no other way about it. So for them to have a couple girls there was very, they were out of place. So the fact that they had the balls to come in there and train is really impressive. The two girls were Dana Borzon and Liz McGonigal. Liz ended up winning the National Golden Glove title for the Golden Gloves. So she was our first national champion for a female. I think Mike Maggio won nationals, so she was probably the second fighter that won nationals at our gym. She was super tough. Dana was tough too. Those girls, they could throw down. So we're palling around, and I was really good friends with Liz, and we would talk or whatever, and she's like, oh, you want to go hang out? I'm getting ready to move to Chicago, blah blah blah. I'm like, yeah, cool. So we went and hung out, and I was telling her how we just started talking about the UFC, and I'm like, man, I would love to do that, but I'm just too small. I'm 140 pounds soaking wet. There's no way I could beat them guys that are 200 plus pounds, those guys. I mean, I'm beating these guys up in the street, but it's not like those guys that were in the UFC. And she's talking, she's like, this was just when the internet started coming out too. The internet is a pretty new thing at this time too. So she's like, well, I'm willing to bet you there's some other organizations that are doing the same thing. It's just going to be on a smaller level. She's like, you should get on the internet and she'd check them out and see if you can find something on there. I was like, oh, that's a good idea. So, after that, I went home, got on the internet, and I found some organizations. I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna do one of these. I was like, I want to train for a little bit first. I was always real serious about my fighting, so I wanted to be ready. So I don't know anything. I didn't even know what Hoist Gracie was doing. I really wasn't impressed with him. Like, I think it was pretty crazy that he was beating these guys, but he wasn't winning like very impressively. And to me, it was just seemed like he would get lucky or something like that. I like watching Ken Shamrock and Frank Shamrock, Dan Severn and those guys like that, because I was a wrestler myself. So I'm thinking I'm just gonna, just do my wrestling and boxing and get ready for these fights. So I'm at the boxing gym and I'm talking to some guys, and Dana's husband, Matt Borzon, who I'm really good friends with, and he's like a kung fu master. He teaches at this kung fu gym downtown in Erie. And he's like, oh man, he's like, I'm telling him I'm going to do this stuff. And he said, oh, you should, I need to introduce you to one of my students, John Bruno. He's into that. He's got a group of guys and they train, and he says Gracie Jiu-Jitsu or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I can't remember what he called it. And he says they train that, that type of ground fighting. He's like, if you're going to do that stuff, you should probably get with them and check it out. I was like, yeah, okay, cool. And he told me John had a key to his dojo, his kung fu dojo, and they would train there sometimes, or they would go out to this guy's house called Will. And I'm like, all right, so Matt Borzon introduced me to John, and I started training with him. I was training boxing, and then after boxing, I'd go do my road work or whatever. Then I'd get with John so many times a week, and we would train jiu-jitsu at the kung fu place. John, he didn't really know much about jiu-jitsu. He was kind of like, back then, pretty much everybody was buying VHS tapes and learning off VHS tapes. We didn't have, CDs or DVDs at the time. It was all VHS, videotapes that they would watch. And I didn't even know they made videotapes for, instructional videos for them to watch. But, he's just showing me some stuff, and, I'm just really not really convinced, and I'm just like not impressed with this. I don't even know what he called it. I think he called it Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I still wasn't impressed with it. I still felt like, I was a really good wrestler, so I just felt like, I would just use my wrestling to do whatever. He's like, oh, I gotta take you over to Will's. Will had, he literally had the Gracie garage. He had a 1 or 2 car garage. It was I think it was 1 car, but maybe it was 1.5. And he had these really nice, I want to say they were zebra mats, and he had wall mats. He literally had the Gracie garage. And his name was Will Storr. He actually went out. He was a martial arts guy. I think he did Goshin Jitsu karate around here. I think he was a black belt in that. But he actually moved out to Torrance, California to train with the Gracies. And he got his blue belt from Hoist or Horion, or both of them at the same time or whatever. But he actually got his blue belt from those guys. And a blue belt back in 1999 is that's you're a badass. That's you're a stud. And there just really wasn't any ranked people at all doing any of that. No one even really knew what it was. So he moved back, and he was training at this in his garage. And I couldn't understand. I think there was always something with this John dude. Me and that dude don't get along. I'd bitch slap his ass if I seen him now. It was like he was keeping me from training with this Will guy. Will was like the OG of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in this area. He was he actually went and trained and got a legitimate belt in Jiu-Jitsu. And he was a legitimate blue belt for sure. And I'm pretty strict on the belts and stuff. If you're wearing a belt and I don't think you deserve it, I'm definitely not afraid to tell you about it. Will was definitely a legitimate blue belt. So the first time I met Will, he's talking to me, and he's telling me how I got to learn Jiu-Jitsu. And I'm not convinced. I was real cocky. I was overconfident. A lot of people have a confidence problem. I was overconfident. I was just super cocky, and I was overconfident. I felt like I could beat anybody. And even after they beat me up, I felt like if I fought them again, I'd kick their ass. It was just that was my mentality. I was just overconfident, and I was determined. And Will always said, and this stuck with me, this actually bothered me. He always said, if you really want to do something, you want to make it big and do well in mixed martial, and at the time it was not mixed martial arts too, so we got to get that straight. It was called extreme fighting. It was called no holds barred, NHB. It was called cage fighting. MMA, those three letters didn't even come into existence. The Athletic Commission wasn't involved. It was NHB, which I actually wish they would have stuck with the NHB. I kind of felt like that had more of a cooler ring to it than the MMA and calling it mixed martial arts. But Will always said you got to move out to California to really do something. All the good guys are out there. He's like, if you try to just do it around here, it's not going to happen. And I'm like, that motivates me. When someone tells me I can't do something, that makes me want to do it anymore. So I really just wanted to prove him wrong. I wanted to prove to him that you can live in this area and still do something. But anyways, he's trying to convince me that I need to learn this stuff. And I'm like, look, man, I don't know, man. He's like, well, what would you do if you were inside someone's guard? And I was just like, I'd just stand up and throw their legs off me and fucking beat their ass. And he couldn't convince me. He's like, all right. He's like, look. He's like, I'm not that good, and I'm not in as good a shape as you are. And at that time, I was like 175 pounds. I got into lifting weights towards the beginning of my mixed martial arts career. So I was pretty jacked. And Will's a smaller guy. He's probably like 145, 150 pound guy at the time. And he's not in shape. He's not a fighter. But he's like, let's grapple and let's see what you do. So we started in guard because that was the position he was trying to convince me of. And I'm just a wrestler. I don't know anything. Never even did jiu-jitsu. So I'm just doing what I would normally do. And he didn't tap me or didn't beat me. I definitely was dominating him, but the stuff that he was doing, it was off balancing me, and my balance was very good. So I could just see there was something to what he was saying, and I was like, man, he was doing these things. Maybe he swept me, how you open your guard and grab their heels and knock them down, and you try to mount them. He probably did that or something, but I just know he was really off balancing me, and my balance was really, really, really good. So the fact that he was off balancing me, I knew there had to be something to this. So I had to learn everything there was to know about this stuff. That he hooked me after that day. He couldn't do much and couldn't really use it himself on me, but I could tell that there was definitely something to this for sure. So, go back doing my thing, boxing, wrestling, training jiu-jitsu at the Kung Fu gym. And this is the thing with this John Bruno dude. It's like Will's got this garage, this Gracie garage, and I'm like, why are we always at the Kung Fu gym? Why aren't we, this dude knows way more than John Bruno does. So why aren't we at this Will guy's house trying to learn everything there is to know? And he would try to give me this bullshit excuse about, oh, Will's just kind of funny. He was always just downplaying Will and acting like he'd have a problem with or something like that. But when I finally talked to Will on his own, he was cool with going there all the time and training. So I really just didn't understand what this dude's problem was. But later on in the story, I figure out this John Bruno guy. So I'm training. I'm like, okay, I look up on the internet. There's a fight in Virginia Beach. Richmond, Virginia. Richmond, Virginia. It was called Excalibur Fight Series or something like that. And they had it was in a ring, and they were having Muay Thai fights and extreme fighting. So me, John Bruno, and my buddy Bill Onderjack, we go down to this fight. I cut weight. I weighed in at 150 pounds. And I'm fighting this guy. He weighed 142, 145. He didn't cut any weight. And the promoter was all fuck, when he saw me. And he came up to me. He's like, oh, man, I thought you were going to be smaller. And I'm like, well, I told you I was going to weigh in at 150 pounds. He's like, oh, I know. It's just he was scared I was going to kill this kid, because this kid was, his name was, the kid I fought, I remember his name was Joe, and like he was a Taekwondo guy or a karate guy or something. I think he was like a shitty Taekwondo guy, and I actually respect Taekwondo, so I'm not ripping on Taekwondo. But I could just tell he was Taekwondo. He had like gi pants on, and across the ring he's doing this stupid Bruce Lee shit. Something Bruce Lee always did in the movies every time. I can't remember what it was, but I just remember we made fun of him because he was doing this Bruce Lee shit. And I'm jacked, you know what I mean? And I got like just like long spandex shorts on. I wore wrestling shoes. And I remember thinking before the fight, like I was kind of scared about just doing it. I'm like, oh man, I can't believe I'm doing this. Like, holy fuck, I can't believe I'm doing this. I don't even think it was legal in Richmond, Virginia. I don't know how the guy did the show, but right before I went out there, I'm watching the Muay Thai guys fight, and some guy got shin kicked in the head and knocked unconscious and got put in an ambulance, and I was just like, oh man, I was like, here we go, you know what I mean? Like I was doing this. I got into this because I wanted to be challenged. I was beating everyone up in town, so I want to test my skills across the country. I drove to Richmond, Virginia. I told them to match me up with the baddest dude they could find. I told the promoter that. I said, look, he's asking me how much fight experience I got. I said, like, I've never done this. I was like, but look, man, I'm not driving. I think it was like an 8 or 10 hour trip. I'm not driving 10 hours for you to put some pussy in front of me. I want the baddest motherfucker you can find. And it was just some terrible karate guy. So I finished him in the first round. I walked out. We threw hands a little bit. I think I lateral dropped him and I put him in a wrestling headlock, and I just squeezed the life out of him. He didn't tap for a while, but I mean, I was squeezing. I was trying to pop his head off. I squeezed the fucking shit out of him. So once he finally tapped and they called a stop, I got off him, and he's laying there. They had to bring oxygen in. They had to hook up an oxygen mask to him. He was, I think I about killed the kid. And they carried him out of the ring on a stretcher, and it was just hilarious. So that was I think that fight was in 2000. So I started like in the middle of 1999, trained and did this fight in 2000. So that was my first MMA fight, and I was addicted to fighting because I felt like every time I got in there, I learned something that I couldn't learn in the gym. So it was just, I wanted to become the best fighter I could possibly be, the best street fighter. I wasn't looking at this as a sport. To me, this was like, oh my God, like, you're gonna pay me a few $100 and give me some travel money, and I'm gonna be able to go street fight somebody, and I'm not gonna be arrested. Like, this was the best thing in the world. This was a street fight, in my opinion. It was a legal street fight. I didn't think of it as a sport. I was just thinking like, this is a street fight. That's how I took it. So, I had a key to the boxing gym. So we're going to the boxing gym. We're training a little bit up there because it's got the heavy bags and stuff. And that kung fu gym just had, he just had some like little puzzle mats in the kung fu gym. So we were going to the boxing gym a lot. We'd go to Will's every now and then, but John would seem to keep me away from Will. And then they had a group, so then I started meeting some other people from around that would train. Some guys, I can't remember the name, but this is when I ended up John Bruno introduced me to Mike Rooney, who ended up becoming one of my steady training partners, who's now a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think he was the first black belt in Erie to get his black belt in Jiu-Jitsu. That's when I met Mike, and he was training. So you start kind of just meeting all these guys are training, and then I've learned that they're just learning off VHS tapes. So I'm trying to get some VHS tapes, borrow some VHS tapes. We got a bunch of shit to learn, and we're all just training. Getting ready. Most of us want to fight, and So then I ended up hurting myself. This was another stupid thing about this John Bruno dude. He was acting like he was like my trainer. I had to correct him a few times and be like, look, dude, we're just training partners. Like, yes, you know more about jiu-jitsu than me, but you don't know that much jiu-jitsu, and I know way more about fighting than you. You've never fought, you've never boxed, you've never fought or done anything. You know, he claims he got in a couple street fights, which I don't believe. Okay, he actually said, this is hilarious. Okay, I gotta snitch on him for this. You know, Mike Maggio, he was on the Olympic boxing team, and he was fighting in our gym. He was like one of the best fighters in the country, and he was a badass. You know, he's a super tough dude. And John Bruno told me that one time in a bar fight, he beat Mike Maggio in a street fight. And I was just like, you beat Mike Maggio in a street fight. I was like, I don't believe that. He's like, I did, I swear to God, blah, blah, blah. Well, long time later, I went and I trained with Mike, and I asked about that, and he told me that John Bruno's full of shit. And I totally didn't believe it. I knew he was full of shit, but I had to be like, look, dude, this dude's going around saying he beat you up in a street fight. So I knew that didn't happen. So John was a storyteller. So my neck got hurt really bad at training. He's like, John's telling me that I got to get comfortable upside down, stacked upside down on my neck. My neck wasn't super flexible then. So I'm trying to do these arm bars in practice, and people are stacking me, and I don't think I ever heard my neck pop or anything like that, but my neck hurt really bad. So I just keep training, but I'm starting to have trouble doing push-ups. Like I ended up having atrophy on the whole right side of my body. So like I herniated a disc in my neck, and it was pinching off all the nerves down the right side of my body, and my muscles were like getting super small on the right side of my body. So I ended up having to go to a neck doctor, and he's, shooting cortisone shots on my neck, and I still can't do any push-ups, but like, man, I want to fight. So I'm still training to the best of my ability, and I'm still going to fight. So quite a few fights after that, I took some fights, and I couldn't even do a push-up, and I won some, lost some, doing that. And we're still training at the boxing gym, at the kung fu gym and stuff like that. So then, they're also training at this place called the Pembrire. This guy Lenny Lombardo, he was like one of like the head trainers up at the Pembrire, and they had a room that was all matted. So sometimes we would go up there and we'd wrestle around too, and we would train up there sometimes. And then there was this guy. This guy moved into town, this Korean guy. His name was Joseph. I'm not too sure what his last name was. I believe his first name was Joseph, but he was a Korean guy. I only talked to him once, and twice actually. It really wasn't. The first conversation was good, and the second conversation was really terrible. This Joseph guy came into town, and I guess from what people told me, he worked for like the Korean government. I don't know if he was. They acted like he was like in some intelligence thing. He was some military commander guy, some bullshit. They made him sound like he was like a fucking assassin or some shit like that. And he knew he was doing like this leg lock stuff. So I'm like, oh, I gotta try to get with this guy. Well, right before I got to meet this guy, me and this John Bruno guy, we had a falling out. He finally, we probably just got into an argument about him trying to say he's my trainer. He's not my trainer, and and then he's talking shit about me. And back then, if you talk shit about me, I'm coming looking for you. I'm gonna fuck you up. So he was talking shit about me, and he like got all these people, this group of people that were training. He like got them to like not train with me, like they wouldn't train. I kept calling people to try to set up, try to train, and was like, no, not training, blah blah blah. And John Bruno was behind this shit. he was telling everyone not to train with me for some reason. He was like a hater. So I called him up. I talked shit to him. I saw him driving down the road. I tried to run him off the road one time with my car. Like, I'm going to fuck this dude up. I'm the one that wants to do this MMA thing. I want to go somewhere. I want to be, I keep saying MMA because it wasn't MMA back then, but I'm the one that wanted to do this NHB thing. I'm the one that wanted to fight and try to go somewhere with this. And these guys were just hobbyists. They just did it because they liked the UFC and they thought it was fun. And here I am trying to be serious, and this fucking asshole is trying to keep these guys from training with me. So finally, this Joseph guy comes into town, and supposedly he's the one that, like, fuck, I gotta get with this guy because he really knows shit. Like, he's like supposedly super good. Well, John Bruno somehow hooks up with him before I do, and puts a bunch of bullshit in his head. And I think John Bruno told this Joseph guy that I was talking shit on him, which I wasn't. I never talked no shit on this guy. And I knew from word on the streets that this Joseph guy didn't like me because of John Bruno's bitch ass. And I guess they ended up renting a little gym area, up in this building. They were on, like, I don't know, the 3rd or 4th floor. And poor Will, because Will was in with this Joseph guy too, this Korean dude, and Will, they didn't have any mats, and they're like, oh, we need mats. So the nice guy that Will was, he let these guys borrow his mats, and they ended up stealing the mats. They never gave him the mats back when they closed down, and God knows where the mats are at now, but I heard someone took them into another town and put them in their basement. And so basically Will got his mats stolen from him, and he was doing this nice thing, giving these guys his mats, trying to get in with this Joseph guy, and then they ended up robbing him. So I think this Joseph guy was like doing like some cult shit. He had a group, and finally I can't remember. This is how it went. Okay, I was seeing them at these fights and stuff, and his guys were getting their ass kicked, and I was winning, so I was loving that shit. And finally, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna try to just go up to this Joseph guy and confront him and tell him, look, John Bruno's full of shit. This is who I am. Let's see if we can work this out. So I heard where his gym was at, so I just decided to stop up there and just pop in and see if I could, talk to someone. And I went in, and Joseph, this Korean guy, Joseph, was in there by himself. He let me in, and I talked to him. He's being super nice to me, and I said, look, I think John told you that I talked shit about you. And he's like, he did. And I said, look, I never talked no shit on you. I never said nothing. This is the problem with me and John. I told him what the problem was with me and John. And I said, hey, look, I would like to train. I really want to do this. You've seen me fighting already. And I still had that herniated disc in my neck, so I'm still all fucked up. So I'm like, you see, I'm serious. You've seen me fight in the shows. Let me train with you. I can squash this shit with John Bruno if that's what I got to do to train with you. It's no big deal. I'm just trying to do this myself. I want to get somewhere. He's like, yeah, okay. He's like, that's fine. He said, come back this day. He's like, and you can try out. And I was like, try out? He's like, yeah, I'll give you a tryout for our fight team. So I'm like, I'm like, that's kind of weird, but I heard, like, Ken Shamrock's team, the Lions Den, they did some tryout thing, so I'm like, all right. And he's like, oh, you have to do a bunch of push-ups, we'll put you through this routine, and then you'll live grapple everyone in the gym, and if you do good, then I'll let you come here and I'll let you train. And I told the guy that I had a bad neck and that I couldn't even do a push-up. And he's like, look, it's okay, we just want to see how hard you'll try, like, will you quit? And I'm like, oh, I'm not going to quit. You don't got to worry about that. I'll try. He's like, okay, come this day and we'll have tryouts. Well, this was a setup. He set me up. That dude really wasn't being nice to me. This was some dirty shit. So I go up there that day, I bring my workout gear, and it's kind of just, I just had I had a bad feeling. Like, you got in this gut, like, it's not good. There was a bunch of people there, and I don't even think John Bruno was there that day, and I thought that was weird that he wasn't there. But there was probably 12 people there. There was even a few girls there, and they had Will's mats. They were, nice mats on the ground, and he puts me through all, and they kind of just sit in this like seated karate sit, like Indian style, but on their knees, and they're just sitting there, and they're all quiet, and they're all lined up, and I'm the only one on the mat, and he's telling me to do all these push-ups, sit-ups, jog in place, jumping jacks, burpees. He had me doing all this crazy shit. Like, he got me completely exhausted. He's like, all right, now you're going to live grapple a couple guys. So then I live grappled a couple guys, and I still beat these guys, even though I was super tired and I couldn't even do a sit-up because of that herniated disc in my neck. So then the last guy I grappled was like his best guy. I can't remember his name. He was okay. He wasn't nothing special, but again, he's rested and he's their best guy. So I'm grappling him, and I'm doing pretty good, but he ends up getting my back, and he puts me in a rear naked choke, and I can't escape, so I tap. This motherfucker didn't let go. So then I'm tapping, and this motherfucker isn't letting go, and I'm like, what the fuck? I'm yelling like, what the fuck? And I'm screaming, and then finally he lets me go, and like I'm just like holding my neck. Like, he didn't even have a good choke. It was like across my I don't know, it was across my throat in a fucked up way, and it hurt my throat. And I'm just like, what the fuck? And then this Joseph guy like lost his mind. He started screaming and yelling at me. I don't even remember what the fuck he was saying because it was so long ago. Like, this was probably in late 2000 or 2001. He's calling me names and saying, well, you talk shit about me, blah, blah, blah. He was just screaming at the top of his lungs. Like, I felt like, and I'm sure Joseph knew that I was a street fighter, and, I got in a lot of fights. So I think I was almost scared that, because he's got all these witnesses. These guys were following this dude and doing whatever he says like it was a cult. And I felt like he brought me there. I really thought maybe he was going to kill me because he had witnesses, you know what I mean? Like, I felt like they were going to beat me up and jump me. And if I called the cops or something, they would have all these witnesses to say, oh, Dan started. And my reputation was, I was a troublemaker. I got in a lot of trouble. So the cops are going to believe him. He's this government guy, and he's got 12 or 14 witnesses, and they're going to make up some shit and say I just came there and started some shit and got into a fight and they beat me up. So I really believed that they were going to jump me, and I was just hoping to God I could make it out of there alive. And he cussed me out or whatever. I got my shit and I left, and I was just like, oh, that motherfucker Bruno. Now I feel like he set me up too. I want to fucking fuck him up. So that ended that Joseph bullshit. So the Joseph thing was over with. I'm just like, I guess I'm not training with him. So now I got to figure out something. So I get on the internet and I start searching. I got to, find someone to teach me Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. These guys around here aren't training with me. The only one that would train with me was this guy, Mike Rooney. And he really wasn't training like all the time. Maybe our schedules weren't really meshing too good, but I really couldn't get with him too much. And he didn't really know a whole lot either. He just kind of he knew a little bit more than me, but he was just learning off VHS tapes too. I needed to find somebody that knew what the hell they were doing. So I get on the internet and I'm, looking for, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu people. So the closest one I could find was Rochester, New York. So Rochester, New York is about 3.5 hours from where I live in Erie. So I'm like, man, I gotta go up here. Didn't really have the best car. It was just a hunk of shit, but I was like, I'm gonna have to risk it. And I started driving up about once a week, sometimes once every 2 weeks, as much as I absolutely could. Maybe even a couple times I made it up twice a week. But I went to Rochester. I found this guy named Kyle Saunders. At the time, he was I want to say he was a purple belt, maybe a brown belt. I think he was a purple belt when I first met him, and he had a school inside. He had a school inside this karate inside like a Tang Soo Do gym. So there was a Tang Soo Do karate school, and then he had some time slots where he was teaching jiu-jitsu out of this place. So I was going up there, and he was super cool. He was actually a really good. He was a really good coach. He was a good instructor. So I repped him for a few of my fights. Got up there as much as I could. He promoted me to second or third stripe white belt, and I just kept training up there as much as I could. So then I started my own little grappling club in Erie too. I found a Taekwondo school, and he told me that I could teach on the days he's not there, and I would just pay him, a couple $100 a month, and I ran this grappling club. So that kind of would give me training partners. I called it a grappling club because I didn't know enough to teach people, but I just wanted a place to where we could all get together and train. So it was Mancino Academy. He taught Olympic style Taekwondo, and he was a super good Taekwondo coach. He had some kids go to the Junior Olympics and go overseas and fight. And he was really good. He would take some uncoordinated kids, and then after a couple months, he'd have them they'd be moving, they'd be switching their stances, bouncing. He had them light on their feet like cats. He was a really good Taekwondo coach. But I was teaching a grappling program out of there, going to Rochester. I was fighting as much as I could. I was fighting wherever they had some fights. Did a lot in the danger zone. And then I got to the point where I'm kicking everyone's ass on that too. So now I'm like, man, I really think that I can do something with this. I got to try to find who's got the best fighters in the world. And I heard about some place called Hook and Shoot. It was that was probably the premier fighting organization for the little guys, was Hook and Shoot. And a lot of their top guys would end up going to be in the UFC and doing good. Like lots of famous guys fought in Hook and Shoot. The guy that ran it, his name's Jeff Osborne, and he was a commentator for the UFC for a little bit, and he ran Bodog fights, if anyone remembers that, and Hook and Shoot is pretty OG. His belts were nicer than the UFC. His belts were some of the nicest belts you could ever see. So I heard that he's got the best fighters. So I'm like, man, I gotta fight in his organization. At the time, I was just kind of fighting at 155. There really wasn't a whole lot of little guys. I quit lifting weights, so my weight started dropping. So I started walking around at about 155, so I could fight at 135, 145, or 155 pounds. So I emailed him and told him I wanted to fight his title holder. Can't remember the guy's name. I'd have to look it up, but at 155, and I don't know if he emailed me back or nothing. I don't remember him emailing me back. And I kept training, doing my thing, and then there was this guy, Jeremy Bolt. He was like the #1 ranked Hook and Shoot fighter. So I'm like, man, I want to fight that dude. He won't, I'm sure they won't let me fight the title guy. So I tried to get a fight with this guy. I emailed Jeff. I'm not too sure if he emailed me back right away, but I didn't really hear from him. But then there was this message board called the Underground, mixedmartialarts.com, the Underground. It might have been, now it's MMA.tv, but they had a message board, and a lot of pro fighters would get on there, and fighters would get on there and talk. So I started talking shit, and I called Jeremy Bolt a circus midget. So I told him I'd fight him, and then he talked some shit, said he'd kick my ass or whatever, like I don't deserve to fight him, I don't have enough experience or something like that. And I called him a circus midget, and that really pissed him off, and he's like, let's fight. So I'm like, okay. So I don't know if he talked to Jeff Osborne, but somehow I was able to get a hold of Jeff Osborne. He's like, yeah, you know, you've definitely, he likes that shit talk. He loves like the WWE and things like that. So he loves that shit talk stuff. So that probably interested him in that fight. So something happened, and I got a call from Jeff or something, email or something, and he said that Jeremy. Oh no! Okay, I was supposed to fight this guy named Matty Jitapek. He was a Muay Thai guy in hook and shoot, and he was like the world Muay Thai champion at the time. So I was going to fight this guy, and then there was like a death in his family or something like that, and I was talking shit, and then that's when Jeremy Bolt got in, and I called Jeremy a circus midget, and then Jeremy wanted to fight me, and I think he like wore like that Matty Jitapek's shorts when we fought or something like that. So I fought Jeremy Bolt. He was a #1 ranked hook and shoot fighter, and I was a really smart street fighter, but man, when it came to MMA, I didn't fight very smart. I should have just stayed standing with this guy because Jeremy couldn't stand up with me. I was peppering the shit out of him, and I didn't know enough jiu-jitsu, but I was a wrestler, and I ended up catching his leg when he kicked me, and I flew him up in the air. He did like a somersault flip, landed on the ground, and I just instinct, I went down and I fought him on the ground. Well, I'm beating him up on the ground. And then he ended up, we were in half guard, and I'm, you know, you should stay chest to chest when you're half guard, but I was like sitting way up punching him, and he ended up heel hooking me, and I wouldn't tap, and he ended up breaking my ankle, and so he was pretty happy about that since I called him a circus midget, and it was pretty cool though because the fights in hook and shoot are on pay-per-view in Japan, so they're on a TV show in Japan. And there was like a magazine, and I was like the centerfold. We're punching Jeremy Bolt in the face, and that fight got a lot of attention, I think, because I called him a circus midget. And then and then he revenged me, and the one guy was working his corner. This famous Pride fighter. If you guys remember Pride fighter, I can't remember the guy's name, but they were calling him the Brazilian killer or something like that. He was like always beating all the Brazilians all the time. I can't remember his name, but he was working Jeremy's corner. The Minotauro brothers were there. Like Dustin Denny's fought that night. It was a pretty wild night. It was good, but that was my experience in hook and shoot. And then I fought in hook and shoot. I didn't really do too well there. I lost another fight against Travis Fippen in like 30 seconds. I took him down. He just quick arm barred me. And then I fought this guy, what the hell was his name? Fuck, some dude from Texas, this black dude from Texas that I beat before, but he was a lot bigger than me. We fought in Columbus, and hook and shoot in Columbus during the Arnold Classic, and this was when the athletic commission started getting involved. I had to put like freaking like, I don't know, man, like $80 in quarters in my pockets. I had people's cell phones in my pockets, and I'm the reason why they make you weigh in with no clothes on, because I would weigh in with my clothes on, and I'd stuff my pockets so I'd weigh, because you had to weigh at least a certain amount to fight someone. I think I fought this dude at 170, and I was walking around at 145, so I had to get like, like 30 pounds of quarters in my pockets to make weight so I could fight the guy. And me and him ended up fighting to a draw that fight. But back to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I trained with Kyle Saunders for a while, and then Kyle was a student of Roy Harris. So I started looking up Roy Harris, and Roy Harris was really good. I got hooked up with him, and I'm like, he had a instructor's course that you could take, and he did them all over the country, and he did one that was the closest one I could find was in Maine. So So I'm like, I'm going to take this instructor's course. It cost, I think it was $500. So I sent Roy $500. And believe me, I don't have much money at the time. So like, I don't have a vehicle to get to Maine. I think it was in Portland, Maine. So I take the Greyhound bus to Maine. And luckily, one of the guys that was there, he let me stay at his house. And he was taking the course, so he let me crash at his house, which was super cool. So I went to Maine and became an instructor under Roy Harris and started training under Roy Harris. And that instructor's course was super cool. It was a week long, and he gave us this big book. It was an instructor's manual. I still have it, man, and it's got gold in it, man. Roy is a really, really super good instructor. I would like compare him to this. Like this is how I compare Roy Harris. He really like magnifies everything. Like he takes the most basic technique and he breaks it down into tiny, tiny, tiny pieces. So the best way I would explain Roy Harris is this. If you're going to have a cake cooking contest, you're going to have a baking contest, you're making a cake. Everyone uses the same ingredients for a cake in this contest. So what really is going to make one person make a better cake than the next person? So let's just say cake you put sugar in a cake. This is how Roy Harris would break it down. So, I'm just going to take I'm going to take a 1 cup scoop, I'm going to scoop it, and I'm going to put it in my cake. Roy would magnify it down to like, I could have a cup of sugar, he could have a cup of sugar, but he's going to magnify it down to how many grains of sugar are in that cup. So he breaks it down to minuscule pieces. So, maybe a cup of sugar has 1,200,096 grains of sugar in it, whether I'm just scooping and putting sugar in it. So he magnifies it down to how many grains of sugar are in that cup. He just breaks it down real small. He's the best instructor for sheer basics. Like if your basics will be top notch under Roy Harris. He's really big on the basics, and he was actually a good. He didn't really compete much, but he was a good competitor himself. I think you can look it up on YouTube. But he fought Jean-Jacques Machado, man, and he really gave him a run for his money. And I think Roy Harris was a newish black belt at the time, and Roy is part of the Dirty Dozen, like one of the first 12 black belts to get his black belt in the United States, first Americans to get his black belt. Roy's been doing jiu-jitsu since the beginning. And he's also done a ton of other martial arts. Like, I really don't understand where this guy gets time to become an expert at all these different martial arts. Jeet Kune Do, Savat. He would do that. Roy did a little bit of that stick fighting. If you guys don't know what stick fighting is, there's this really popular group of people in California called the Dog Brothers. I think it's called the Dog Brothers, but they like stick fight. They wear hockey masks and they hit each other with these sticks, and they'll fuck you up with those sticks. So Roy messed around with that a little bit. Roy's done a little bit of everything, and at this instructor's course, he was really teaching you how to teach. He wanted you to teach. Like, he told us we had to, when we got home, he wanted us to read certain books. He was really teaching you how to be a good businessman and how to be a good instructor. We would practice like, what if you had a blind guy come into the gym, he would have us pretend we were trying to teach a blind guy. And it's really difficult when you really put yourself into that situation, because he's like, if you're going to run a grappling business, you have to be able to serve all different kinds of people. You don't know who's going to come into your gym, women, kids, blind person, maybe a disabled person. So he would teach us situations where we'd have to try to learn how to do that. And that was pretty cool. So I spent a week in Maine doing this instructor's course, and he's teaching us techniques, escape and mount, and basic guard stuff. And then there was a guy up there I hung out with. His name was Trent. I can't remember his name, but he was really good. I think he moved to Florida, and he's actually, I've looked him up in the past. I know he's still with Roy, actually. He's probably one of the most original guys that are still with Roy from back in my day. And I think he has a gym in Florida, and he's really, really good. Super duper good. He's really good. So I trained with Roy. Me and Roy got along really, really good. We kind of just took a real close liking to each other. Like at one point in time, he even wanted me to move out to San Diego with him, and he was going to pay for my flight, and I was going to go out there. I assume I was going to probably be teaching at his gym or whatever. And I don't know. I probably should have went, but I didn't. I had a girlfriend I was with at the time, and you just you're kind of just attached to the city you're in. I probably should have went, but I didn't. But I ended up getting my blue belt from Roy. I was a white belt for 3 years. Got my blue belt under Roy. And I was a blue belt for a year. And then I got my purple belt from Roy as well. And Roy always did tests for his belts. It was really like... I kind of feel like it's different for everybody, but my tests were always like, it was just live grappling. Roy would live grapple me, and I think he would like basically just try to make it quit. I didn't have any quit in me. I was really hard-nosed dude, so I think that's why he liked me too, because I was super hard-nosed, and and I was a fighter. So I passed those tests. I think hindsight being 2020, I think I got my purple belt a little too soon, but he probably gave it to me because I was a competitor, and he knew that I would eventually grow into the belt. Roy was really big into like, it's okay if you grow into the belt, and Roy's ideas of jiu-jitsu was your blue belt is basically like where you learn how to escape from white to blue. You're learning how to escape. Blue to purple belt. You're kind of this is kind of where you start becoming, you start finding yourself in the game. You really want to develop your bottom game from blue to purple. And then from purple to brown, Roy expected, that's when you kind of start developing your top game, your pressure game. And then he said, when you get your black belt, you're kind of just okay at guard passing, okay at your guard, okay. Everything, you're just kind of just okay at everything across the board, but then you kind of just refine yourself a little bit. So I got to purple belt with Roy, and then things kind of went sour with me and Roy. This John Bruno guy that I don't like, and I told Roy what he did to me, okay, about how he set me up and almost got me fucking killed and jumped with this Korean dude. People in Erie, in my town, I felt like they're like haters and jealous of me. So regardless, they tried to make it so no one would work out with me. And then I would just find a way. I would go to Rochester, I would find a way. I got this wrestler from Embro University into jiu-jitsu, this guy, Corey Kilburn. He ended up becoming a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I trained with him as much as I could. Mike Rooney at the time, I trained with him as much as I could. Me and Mike don't get along anymore, so I'll tell you about that later. He's a bitch. He ended up turning into a bitch. So, John Bruno got some deal up at Mercyhurst College, and he was like, I don't know what kind of job he was doing up there. I don't know if he was working for them up there, but he got involved with something up there in the workout room where he could get this wrestling room, and he was teaching a class up there to the Mercyhurst students, and he obviously heard of Roy, probably because I was pushing Roy's stuff. I was selling Roy's VHS tapes at the fights I'd go to, t-shirts and stuff. I was doing all kinds of stuff like that, promoting Roy. And then fucking John Bruno decides to get a hold of Roy and ask him if he'll do a seminar at Mercyhurst College. So Roy calls me and he's telling me, oh, we got to talk. I said, okay. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be doing this seminar for John, and I just wanted to talk to you about it. I'm like, yeah. I said, I understand that's how you got to make your money. I get it. But I was like, that'd be fucked up if you let him in our association. I mean, I got a huge problem with that dude. I mean, he's never apologized for what he did to me. And he literally fucking, he tried to get everyone against me in Erie, and he set me up to get beat up in that Korean dude's gym. And he's like, all right, let me talk to John, and blah, blah, blah. So that was the last I heard of it. And Roy went and did the seminars up there. He did one, I think, probably once a year up there. But then I found out that Roy let him in the organization. I seen on the internet that John was repping Roy. And I called Roy and I was like, what the fuck, dude? What the fuck is up with that? And he's like, yeah, I was going to talk to you about that. And, I think you guys should let bygones be bygones. I think you guys need to work it out, talk it out. I said, that should have been done before this happened. So I was hard-nosed and I was just like, you know what? Fuck that, Roy. I'm done. And I cut ties with Roy, and I'm an angry person, so I would go online and I would fucking talk shit on Roy Harris. I was like fucking talking mad shit on him. Me and him are cool now. We mended up our past or whatever. Let bygones be bygones. I'm over it. Time heals most wounds, so I'm not mad at Roy anymore. So it's whatever. I ended up turning out to be a better thing anyways, because I moved to Charleston, West Virginia, and I was a manager at Champ Sports in Charleston, West Virginia, and there was a Hoist Gracie gym there and there was George Gurgel Jiu-Jitsu gym, and can't remember the town. I'm trying to think. It's the same town that Marshall University is in. I can't remember the town in West Virginia, but it was like about a half hour, 40 minutes from me. And Butch Hiles ran the Hoist Gracie gym in Charleston, West Virginia. So I was going to training there. He was super cool. He let me train there for free because, man, I was pissed broke, man. Like, I was so broke. And I was, when I got down to West Virginia to the store, the company was putting me up in this hotel room. I fucking stayed in that hotel room as long as I could till finally they're like, Dan, you gotta find a place to live. You can't keep staying in the hotel room, because they were paying for the hotel room. I stayed in that hotel room for, I don't know, man, fucking 2 or 3 months. And then I'm like, okay, so they told me I can't stay in the hotel room anymore. So I'm like, fuck, like I really couldn't afford to live. My girlfriend I had at the time stayed in Erie because she had kids there. She wouldn't come down to Charleston. And I'm thinking this was just a temporary thing. I just had to make some money to catch up on her bills, and then I'd come back. So I was sending her half my check. I was making like, I don't know, $800 or $900 take home a week. So I'm sending her like $450, $500 home a week. And so I got, half a paycheck to live off of. And I found this this ghetto ass motel. So it was like, I don't know, it was off the beaten path. It didn't look too nice. So I walked up and I'm like, yeah, how much? They advertise weekly rooms, and they're like, I think it was $125 a week, and they're like, I'm not too. The guy told me, he's like, I'm not too sure if you want to stay here though. I was like, oh, I said, well, why is that? And he said, well, this is a working man's motel. I don't know what that meant. So I know what it means now, but I didn't know what it meant then. And he's like, well, I said, yeah, that's fine. I said, I'm not too sure what you mean. I said, I'm a working man. And he's like, no. What I'm getting at is, we rent these motels out by the week, by the day, and we also rent them out by the hour. And I didn't even really know what that meant. in Erie, where I'm from, didn't really think there was any hotels like that, or at least none that I messed with. And now after I'm like, no, I said, no, it's cool. I was like, no, I said it's fine. I'll be fine. He's like, okay, I'm just letting you know beforehand, this isn't, this is a working man's hotel. I said, okay. And then I realized what he meant by paid by the hour is that there was a lot of prostitutes and stuff that would use the rooms up there for their johns. So that was hilarious. So I get in this room and, oh God, it was fucking disgusting, dude. It was terrible. I literally bought boric acid. I bought a shit ton of it. Like the spiders in West Virginia, like they can be like this fucking big, man. Monstrous spiders. I found one. I walked in there one day after work and there's this dead spider on my like it was like I rated like a efficiency. So right in my kitchen in front of the fridge, man, there was a dead spider that like the body of it was like that, and with the legs it was probably like that. And I was like, what the fuck? So I bought some boric acid, and and it's white. Boric acid is white. I put a mound of it all around my bed. So I put all this boric acid around my bed. And I left it there, and that's where I slept for a while. And luckily, there was this really, really nice dude. I'm terrible with names, so I'm sorry that I can't remember your name. I'm friends with him on Facebook. He's actually in Florida right now. He's a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu, and he's doing real good. But this cool dude at Butch's gym said, hey, I'm looking for a roommate to help pay the bills. He's like, I just live with my girlfriend, and we got a room. You can have, we got a bed in there and everything, and it would only be this much money. It was super cheap, and I was like, yeah, dude, fuck yeah, So I moved out of the hotel room and I moved in with him, and he was super duper cool. He bounced at this bar called Coconut Joe's or something like that, Banana Joe's. Yeah, it was Banana Joe's. And he got me a part-time job working there, bouncing, and I was just training at Butch's gym, and then I was going to train at George Gurgel's gym, down the way a little bit. So I was bouncing back and forth. Both places let me train for free, thank God. That was super nice of them. And at George's gym is really where I learned that, man, like I should probably still be a blue belt. His blue belts were just like kicking my ass. And Dustin Hazlitt was training there at the time, and this was like when he was an amateur, and you know what I mean? Like he was fighting on the undercards of my fights, and then he ended up, making it big in the UFC. He was super good, so I was, I got to train with him on a regular basis, and this other guy, Ashley, at George's gym, he was super cool, man. Those guys were awesome at that gym. It was called Ground Zero Jiu-Jitsu gym. Those guys, every one of them guys was super, super duper cool. So George ended up doing a seminar there, and I talked to George. I've known George when I went to some fights. Me and him talked, and I'm talking to him, and I left Roy, and I'm training. I like all George's guys, and I like George personally himself. So I asked George if I could be a part of his association, and he's like, okay. He's like, well, I'm doing this seminar. He's like, I said I wanted to get a private, so I got a private with him, and I'm talking to him, and he let me be a part of his association. That was kind of an interesting thing too, because this guy Dustin Ware, he teaches in Columbus. It's at Ohio Combat Sports Academy or something like that. And I don't know. Me and Dustin knew each other, but me and him really, I kind of felt like we just didn't get along. I don't think he liked me, and he's reffed some of my fights before. I've seen him at the NHB fights. And I think he talked to George, and because George told me like he had to talk to Dustin about it, and Dustin really wasn't a big fan of it. And the reason why Dustin wasn't a fan of it was because I talk shit. So I would talk shit to fighters. And George's gym was more of like the respect thing. They were kind of like, they were more like quote unquote martial artists, you know, honor and respect and stuff like that. And I'm more like the troublemaker, talking shit. I'm like the wild and crazy person. And George had a talk with me about that. He's like, oh, you got to tone it down a little bit. You know, you're wild and crazy. You got to kind of settle down. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll settle down. But that's easier said than done. That probably lasted a few months, and then I was back to my same old self again. So George's gym is where I really learned. Like with Roy, I felt like I was really, really good on the basics. Like my escapes, no one could stay mounted on me. No one could stay side control. My basics were really good. But when it came to passing guard and getting into like the intermediate level of jiu-jitsu, I wasn't getting it. I wasn't getting that. I wasn't learning that from Roy. So I really learned that from George and George's guys. John Stutzman, I ended up becoming really good friends with him, and he ended up becoming my instructor. He promoted me. Him and George promoted me to brown belt, and then John promoted me to black belt with George's permission. And John Stutzman promoted me to brown belt with his brown belt. So like I really thought that was a super big honor for me to get the brown belt from, you know, your instructor. Like that's just, you know, his brown belt was just tethered, man. That thing was like almost white. It was beat up. And then when I got my black belt, he promoted me to black belt with one of his black belts that he had that he would use as like a second black belt to train in and stuff like that. He spent a lot of time in, and that belt was pretty tethered. So I really thought it was a huge honor to be promoted by John with his belts. And unfortunately, me and him had a kind of a falling out when I got arrested for the dog fighting stuff. But I'll get into that a little bit later. So I'm training under George's banner, and you know everything's going really good. George was like, I always felt like he didn't corner me in every fight. I was fighting all the time, and I really wasn't like training like right out of one of his gyms. I was still kind of trying to do my own thing. When I moved back to Erie, and I was just still trying to do my own thing. I'd bring John Stutzman in for a seminar every now and then, and I was just still always doing my thing and trying to train with John as much as I possibly could, which really wasn't a lot. Of maybe once a year, a couple times a year, I was getting with him. But I was talking to him a lot on the phone, and he was telling me what I got to do to get to that next level, that next step. But whenever George would corner me, I always felt like, man, like I felt like I always fought better with George in my corner, for sure. He definitely was a motivational guy. Like that guy can motivate you. He can really just make you dig down deep inside you, and he can just bring out the best in you. So I always felt much better when he worked my corner. George worked my corner for my last MMA fight. Can't remember what year it was. I want to say it was maybe like, I don't know, maybe 2008. I think was maybe my last MMA fight. I took this fight. I can't even remember what organization it was in, but it was a pretty big organization on the smaller level, and I was fighting this guy from Hawaii. Can't remember his name, but he was really good. We were fighting at 135 pounds, and he came in like 3 or 4 pounds overweight. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. So they gave me a little bit extra money. And of course, I'm fighting him anyways. I don't care. And so I'm like, you know, we're fighting him, and oh my God, that was a rough one. I almost lost my eye that day. Talk about having a bad day at work. This day, like, I couldn't do anything right. I was just having an off night. Like, I did a heel hook on this dude, and I just fucked it all up. Like, afterwards, I'm thinking, what the fuck was I doing? Why did I do it like that? Like, I just had an off night. He elbowed, and this is a this is a problem that I had. I felt like I've gotten hosed a lot of times by refs, so I started talking to the refs beforehand, and the ref that fight was Mark Matheny, and me and him had an off and on relationship. I know I'm getting off track here, but I got to tell you this story before I go back to the other one. So Mark hosed me bad in this fight in Steubenville, Ohio. Okay, I fought this D2 National Wrestling champion. I can't remember his name. He's got a brother. They fought too, Luke, and his brother's name was Luke, but I can't remember the guy's name I fought. But I fought this dude, and I got him in a triangle, and he wasn't tapping, but it was like I had it. You know what I mean? Like he was going to tap. And I was putting everything I had into this triangle because I was losing the fight. And I finally got him in this triangle. And I was like, it's either this triangle or nothing. So I squeezed with everything I fucking had. He was going to go out. I promise you. I know for a fact I had it. I'm good at jiu-jitsu, and I know I had that choke. It might have just been a little off, which why it was taking me a little longer to tap him, but believe me, I knew he was going to go out. And this motherfucker, Mark Matheny, fucking broke it up and restarted us standing up. You aren't supposed to do that. You can't do that. You can't do that when someone has someone in a fucking submission. He argued with me afterwards about it, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you motherfucker. Like, I'm MF that motherfucker. And I lost the fight. So I had a problem with this dude ever since that happened because he hosed me, and I hold grudges. So then I got a job reffing and judging for the athletic commission, and they had Herb Dean come in and do a reffing seminar. So I was invited to that, so I took that, and I ended up getting paired up or sitting close to Mark Matheny, and me and him started talking. I'm like, dude, you fucking hosed me. He's like, no, I didn't, blah, blah. I'm like, bull fucking shit. You fucking hosed me that day. He's like, let's ask Herb. He brings Herb Dean over and tells Herb Dean the situation. And Herb Dean told him he shouldn't have fucking did that. And Mark apologized to me, and, you know, we made up. And after that, he ended up being a super good ref. But actually, before that reffing seminar, I fought in this show. Fuck, I wish I could remember it because it was a pretty popular show. I was always like, every promoter had my number on speed dial because I would take a fight on an hour's notice. As long as I could be there and drive there, if you give me enough time to drive there, I'll be there to fight. So there was a guy that bailed the fight and is going to fight Brandon Gardner. And Brandon Gardner was on the Ultimate Fighter reality show at one point in time too. He's a really tough dude. And they were looking for someone to cover for him. So I got a call, and I'm like, yeah, I'll fight him. So I show up, and I'm at the rules meeting, and Mark Matheny does not know that I'm there. So he's doing this rules meeting, and he's talking about this fucking fight where he stood me up in the triangle. And he's trying to say, oh, this freaking kid, he didn't say my name in front of everyone, but he was talking about that fight. He's talking about, oh, this guy thinks he knows jiu-jitsu. I know jiu-jitsu. That's what Mark is saying. He's like, I know jiu-jitsu, and I will stand you up if I don't think you have something, blah, 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 blah. Like, he's talking shit on me. And I'm like, oh, no, motherfucker. So I sit up. I'm like, hey, Mark, I'm right here, dude. And it was like, if you want an unscheduled bout in the ring, me and you can fight in that fucking cage. I was like, I'll beat your fucking ass. So I was like, all these fighters are at this rule meeting, and I'm standing up motherfucking Mark Matheny at the rules meeting telling him I'm going to beat his ass, and me and him can get in the cage and fight, and he's a fucking cocksucking piece of shit for stopping that fight, and he's wrong. Shit was hitting the fucking fan. So it calmed down or whatever, and then later on, Bernie Perfado, he's the head athletic commissioner of Ohio. He found me, and he reamed me out for talking to Mark like that and disrespect him at the rules meeting and telling me that if I ever do that again, I'll never fight ever again, blah, blah, blah. So he cussed me out, and he was super mad at me. But then we came to that rules meeting, and that Herb Dean thing, and Herb told him I was wrong, and me and Mark made up, and he ended up, because I would prefer him to ref all my fights after that happened, because he finally got his shit together and became a super good ref. So he is reffing my last fight, and I have a talk with him. Hey, look, I take a lot of punishment. My style was like, I'm gonna wear them out. Like, I'll take punches to set up submissions and shit like that. I'm like, so please, if you think I'm hurt, don't stop it. Talk to me. I will talk to you. I can get punched in the head and have a conversation with somebody. Like, punches just don't affect me. I was like, please don't stop it. He's like, all right, I won't. This was the one time I probably wish he did stop it, because I took about 130 elbows to the I can't remember if it was this. I think it was this side. I took about 130 elbows to that eye. I got my orbital bone broke in the first round, and I fought the distance. I went the distance with this guy, and my orbital bone was broke. I almost lost my eye. It was broke underneath, on the side, and on the top. So the whole eye socket was shattered. During for sure the third round, I think even the second round, like literally there was 3 people. Like when I looked at my opponent, I could see 3 people. And I'm not talking about, like, I know how, like, you say, oh, I see double, and like one person's solid and the other person is kind of fading, you can see through them. I really saw 3 solid people when I looked at this dude. Mark stopped the fight for the doctor to look at me a couple times, and the doctor came over to look. I'm like, oh, I'm fine. Really, I'm not fine. I'm hurting like a motherfucker, but I don't quit. And I'm like, I'm fine. And the doctor's like, I'm going to hold up some fingers. Tell me how many I'm holding. And thank God, this was where George was super smart. George Gurgel was working my corner. He had his hand on the back, on my neck. And if the doctor held 3 fingers up, he tapped my head 3 times. George knew I was fucked up. He knew I couldn't fucking see. So then he'd tap 3 times, I would say 3. Then they would hold 4. George would tap my head 4 times, I would say 4. They'd hold up 1, he'd tap my head once. Thank God George did that. George is fucking awesome in the corner, because if he didn't do that, they would have stopped the fight, because I would not have been able to answer those questions. I really could not see how many fingers were held in front of me. And when I looked at the guy fighting, I literally saw 3. So when we were standing up and they said go, I just kept my guard up, and I got to where I felt I was close, and I just ducked and I just shot in for the middle person, and I missed every single time. But then I would just stay kind of curled up on the ground and let the guy get on top of me, so then I could feel him, so I knew where he was at, and that was the only way I could finish that fight. But I finished that fight. They sent me to the hospital. I went to the Ohio State University Hospital. They told me that I had this orbital fracture. They literally said if you would blow your nose, sneeze or blow your nose, your eyeball would fly out and be on the floor. So I had to go back. I had to go to like the ear, nose, and throat doctors, and they did X-rays, and they seemed to think everything was fine. It still kind of shakes every now and then. Like it feels like it, like I don't know, it moves funny every now and then. So I'm sure it's a little bit fucked up. But I didn't lose my eye, and I almost lost my eye that day. That was a pretty memorable time. For fighting, but that was my last fight, and got my brown belt. I was a purple belt for 6 years before I got my brown belt. So I was a purple belt for a really long time, and I really think that was the most fun. That was my favorite belt level. I felt like I was like probably one of the best in the world at purple belt. I loved being a purple belt. Purple belt was just so much fun. I loved being a purple belt. That was a really good time. A brown belt, I think I was a brown belt for 3 or 4 years, and then I got my black belt. And I didn't really compete much as a brown belt. I did, and I didn't really compete much as a black belt, but I did a little bit. by the time I got to brown and black belt from fighting, I was always fighting, like I'd walk around at 145, 150 pounds. I'd fight guys that were 180. I mean, I'm going to be posting videos of me fighting guys that are 180, 175, cutting weight to 175. I fought whoever. I was just trying to find out how tough I was. That's why I got into MMA. I wanted to find out how tough I was. It was like a challenge to see how tough I was. I was like, I want to find out. I want to see if someone can hurt me. I want to see if someone can knock me out. And I was really like, I could really just take a lot of punishment. People were always impressed, and like the punishment that you can take and just keep going is just something else. It's like, I was hard headed. I could just take all the punishment and I would come out with a submission. Submission in the end. It was pretty wild and crazy. So then I got my black belt, and then I got arrested. And this is where I feel like jiu-jitsu lies to you. They act like, you know, your team is your family and things like that. Like, I spent the night at George's house. I gave John Stutzman a puppy, a pit bull puppy. You know what I mean? Like, you know, these were who I thought these guys were my friends. I thought they were my family. And then I got arrested. So you got to understand what happened when I got arrested. This is probably a video for another day, but since it's part of my jiu-jitsu journey, I'll just put it in there. So I was working at this bar, and there's a head bouncer there his name was Chris Hall. He's a piece of shit. He was racist as fuck, and I felt like I shared a couple funny memes where, like, Coconut Joes and Sluggers, it would be like a shit white tan, and, like, you know, not it, you know, and the darker it got, it would be like you weren't allowed in this bar. This bar had a dress code, a gas dress code. You know, you couldn't sag your pants. You couldn't wear, like, which is crazy. Sluggers is a sports bar, but they didn't want you wearing, like, you know, like football jerseys and stuff like that, except on Sundays. You know, so you could only wear, like, certain types of clothes. So I'm working at this bar, bouncing, and this Chris Hall guy was in the front. He was kind of overseeing the front. And these 3 or 4 black guys came in, and they paid the cover fee. It was like $3 each or something. And then as they were coming through, this guy Chris Hall says, you know, you guys don't pass the dress code. And they're like, okay, yeah, you know, no problem. You know what I mean? We'll leave. And they said, can we have our money back? And Chris said no. He said they couldn't have their money back. And now they're starting to get pissed off, and rightfully so. I was always the guy that called up because I was the toughest one in the bar, you know, and the bouncers. So they would always call me for everything. So he called me up and be like, hey, these guys got to go. And I'm listening to see what's going on. And they're like, well, we want our money back. So then I figure out what's going on, and I'm like, well, why aren't you giving them their money back? And Chris is like, I'm just not giving it back to them. Like, he literally robbed them. He robbed them. So I said, hey, look, you guys, look, here's your money. I took out my own money out of my own wallet. I paid these guys their cover fee back, and I didn't kick them out like Chris wanted to, and that pissed him off. So that pissed him off. So me and this Chris dude had a problem. I'm going to try to sum this up. This is probably a video for another day, but basically, me and this Chris dude had a problem. He tried to send some people into the bar to beat me up. I ended up beating them up. Then he suspended me or fired me, and then I went and harassed him, and then he hired this cop's fucking son to bounce there, and I would go to these block parties that are outside the bar, and I'd talk shit to Chris. Well, I think he asked this cop's son if she could fuck with me. So she fucked with me. She called me up, and she actually followed me a little bit. She would see me walking my dogs and pull up and ask me about my dogs, acting friendly. And I would show her my dogs, talk to her about my dogs. but really she was being shady. And I saw her a few times. I thought it was weird, so I thought she must have been watching me or something. And it turns out she's good friends with my neighbor, who was always calling the cops on me for my dogs too. And so anyway, she ends up calling me, threatening to charge me with harassment or something if I don't leave this Chris guy alone. And so she's telling me she's going to charge me with harassment and this, that, and the other thing. So then I tried to defend myself. I was like, look, I didn't go in the bar, blah, blah, blah. And she interrupts me. I said, don't you fucking interrupt me. And then she hung up on me. And I'm like, wait a minute. A cop is calling me, talking shit about charging me with shit, and then I defend myself. She hangs up on me. I got a feeling she wasn't supposed to hang up on me. So I called back and I asked to speak to the OIC. The OIC is officer in charge. That's what they call the cops here that are kind of like the boss of the shift. So I talked to the OIC and I said, hey, look, this bitch Cheryl Fry called me and telling me she's threatening this, threatening that, and then she hangs up on me. I told him I swore at her and she hung up on me. And he's like, well, she wasn't even supposed to call you because I'm supposed to know about all that stuff before she does that. I was like, oh, really? I said, I had a feeling she wasn't supposed to call me. I said, well, I want the incident number for the person that complained. He's like, oh, it's going to take me a while to get for that. And I said, I want to file a complaint. He told me to come down, file a complaint. I'm going to try to just speed through this story. So I go down there, I filed a complaint with her, and then I come back home, and then literally an hour or 2 hours at the most after I get home, some fucking craziness is going on in my backyard. I hear my dogs barking and going nuts out back. I run out my back door. I see Cheryl Fry's good friend videotaping something in my backyard. I look, one of my grown dogs is beating up one of my puppies, and a bunch of my dogs are running loose. So someone let my dogs loose in my backyard, and then two of them got into a fight. I go and I break it up, and this is like a 12-week-old puppy, so I'm worried about her. So I run her in the house, I put her in the bathtub, I'm cleaning her off to make sure to look at her, and who's the first cop that shows up at my house? Cheryl Fry, the cop that I just filed a complaint on, is at my house right now. Isn't that a coincidence? And then there was another cop. So that's how fucking shit hit the fan. And they called, and listen, you got to understand how this works too, okay? When it comes to animal stuff, okay, regular cops, the everyday cops that patrol the streets, they don't know the animal laws very well. So what they do is they call like the Humane Society, and then there's this place called the Anna Shelter. They have cruelty officers who are basically licensed almost like police officers, and they know the dog laws, so they call them to investigate it because the police don't know the dog laws, so they call that person to investigate it. That person comes, they take a look at all my dogs, okay? They take all the ones that are outside for some reason. I'm not too sure why, but they left the ones that are inside the house. So if I was fighting dogs, why would you leave the dogs that are inside the house? You would take all the dogs, okay? So basically what it came down to was the cruelty person told the cops that, look, the only thing you guys can charge them with is having too many dogs, because I was over the legal limit for how many dogs you could have. And that's just an ordinance issue. That's the only thing he's guilty of, okay? So that's what the cruelty person told them. So everybody leaves, whatever. They say, I got to change a couple things, and they're going to come back tomorrow and look at it. Well, in the meantime, Cheryl Fry goes and talks to the chief of police and works out this thing where, like, she wants to take over and she wants to charge me. Okay, because the cruelty officers aren't charging me. So the chick that I filed a complaint on wants to charge me with some shit that should be what's the word I'm looking for? It's almost like you shouldn't allow somebody to be the arresting officer if you filed a charge on, because it's like a conflict of interest. I would think that's a conflict of interest. I just filed a complaint on this chick, and you're letting her charge me. There was 1 million cops at my house. Any of them could have been the arresting officer and did the charges, but she did the charges, okay? And she did the charges because the cruelty dude told them that there was nothing that they could do, Okay, so she fucking hosed me, okay? So then, you know, it blows up in the news, you know what I mean? And I'm all over the world for fighting dogs, okay? And then I find out online that I got kicked off Team George Gurgel. No one had a conversation with me like you would think, as close as John Stutzman and George Gurgel and I were. You think they would at least call me and have a conversation with me. And I can understand if they wanted to kick me off because it's bad, you know what I mean? I wasn't paying them an association fee, you know what I mean? I wasn't doing none of that. I was just kind of just training under them. I did my own promotions. When I was a purple belt, I was promoting people to blue belt, you know, and shit like that. You know what I mean? I just did whatever the fuck I wanted to do. And, but you think that at least they would have the decency to call me up and have a conversation with me and be like, hey, look, you know, I know they're running a business. Look, we gotta kick you off. And, you know, when this shit's, you know, if you're found not guilty, we'll let you back on. Or, you know, when some time goes by, blah, 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 we'll let you back on. But no, they didn't do that. I just found out online. I called John and I told him that I thought that was fucked up, and he even admitted that was wrong. He might have apologized for it, I think. I don't really remember the exact specifics of the conversation. He might have apologized, but I know he said that it was wrong for him not to do that he shouldn't have did that. And you know what? People make mistakes. It's no big deal. I'm not going to hold it against you, whatever. But that's how I ended up getting kicked off Team George Gurgel. And now I'm just roning. I'm just doing my own thing like I pretty much always did. But there was that. But then, you know, I got to jump back, but I forgot I got to tell you about the Mike Rooney thing, you know, because he turned into a piece of shit. Because when I got arrested for the dogfighting shit, he kicked me out of his gym too. I closed my gym down because it was just getting, I had a gym, it was called Team DNA. I was training people, really good guys too. I had a really good team, but it was getting too tough working full time and trying to run a gym full time, man. That was stressful as fuck. I definitely don't regret closing my gym down. I miss it sometimes because there's a lot of good times I had, like, you know, lots of good times I had at the gym, but overall, I'm happy having my free time back and being able to do stuff that I want to do instead of being stuck at a gym. But anyways, I sent all my guys to train with Mike. Mike is probably right now the best jiu-jitsu instructor that someone could learn from in the Erie area. He was the first black belt in Erie, but me and him have a lot of similarities as far as like teaching styles go. He is a really, really good instructor. I got to give him that. But I'm disappointed in him because he made a Facebook post telling me that I got kicked out of his gym, that he wasn't going to let me train there anymore because of my charges. And if there was anybody that I thought would have did that, I thought it wouldn't have been him, because he kind of he doesn't advertise, and it seems like he has enough guys to pay the bills. He just seems like he's just running his gym just so he can have a bunch of guys to train with himself, and it just happens to work out that he's got enough people there to pay the bills. So he's not doing like really any advertising, and it wasn't listed that I was an instructor there. I just popped in there every now and then to train, and I sent all my guys there to train. And me and Mike had a history because we fought together on cards. I mean, we did crazy shit. We take fights on a day's notice, and you know, I mean, we spent a lot of time training together. So, you know, we know each other really, really well. So I'm really disappointed in him for hosing me like that. And even when he talks about the old days, like, he just calls me his training partner. This bitch can't even fucking say my name. I heard him talking about some fucking fights he did in the early days and how he got hooked up with Roy Harris, and he would say my training partner hooked me up with Roy and this, that, and motherfucker, I got a name, bitch. I got a fucking name. Why don't you use it? If I see that fucking dude, I'm gonna cuss his ass out. Fuck you, Mike Rooney. You're a bitch. And you're a super bitch. And that's pretty fucked up. It's super fucked up. I'm disappointed in you. That's some fucked up shit you did. And then this other dude that started this other club in Erie, okay? And that's the thing, is I basically trained all the competition in Erie. Like, you know, I trained with Mike Rooney. He's running a gym. And then there's this gym called 3 Elements in Erie, Pennsylvania. This guy Mark Yates started that gym. I promoted Mark Yates to blue belt, and he got his black belt before me. He got mad at me, okay, and quit training with me because I wouldn't give him a purple belt. I was a purple belt when I gave him his blue belt, okay? I'm certainly not going to give you a purple belt if I'm a purple belt. It didn't even make sense, okay? And I'm not even supposed to be promoting people, but Roy Harris would let people do that, so that's kind of how I got into that. And I always made sure people were like, if I was going to promote someone to blue belt, they were fucking good. So if you ever competed against them or rolled with them, you'd have no doubts that they're that belt. Like, it wouldn't even be an argument. It wouldn't even be a discussion because you know that they're worth it. So like, I promoted Mark to his blue belt, okay? So I got him started, and then he gets his black belt before me. It doesn't even make sense. Like, I can kick his fucking ass. Like, I would see this dude at a bar, and he'd kiss my ass because he was afraid I was going to beat his ass someday. Because I caught him running a class because I gave him a key to my gym. Like, I was teaching out of this Taekwondo academy, so I made an extra key because he wanted to, like, maybe get some extra training sessions in because of his work schedule. And it turned out that he was trying to run a class behind my back. And then I found out about it. I walked in on it. And then, he was training with this dude, Justin Wilcox. I was training Justin Wilcox, and he got into the Bellator fighting series. He did pretty decent in MMA. He was a D1 All-American college wrestler. And I was training him, but then he kind of hooked up with Mark, and they kind of were doing some sneaky shit behind my back. And I told that fucking Justin Wilcox, I was like, let's go outside, motherfucker. I'll fight your ass outside. I'll beat the fucking shit out of you, because he was trying to get hard with me. He was trying to show up because there was a couple off-duty cops that they were training, and I think he was trying to act tough. I'm like, dude, I'll bitch slap the fuck out of you right in front of these cops, motherfucker. Fuck you. And he wouldn't go outside with me. They know fucking, they know I don't fucking play that shit. So he's a bitch. Mark Yates is a bitch. Mike Rooney's a bitch. And here's how shitty Mark Yates is, okay? After I kicked him out of my gym, he went and hooked up with Mike Rooney. And Mike Rooney was training in his basement, okay? Wait till you hear this story. Okay, yeah, this is how dirty Mark Yates is. So Mike Rooney, he's a real friendly dude. He's like, yeah, you can come up to, you come up to my personal house, okay? He was training, he had mats in his basement. He was training people in his basement, okay? So he was letting Mark Yates come into his house. So then I guess, because Mark was pretty good. So I think how this happened was, since Mike was teaching in his basement and he was charging people to train there, okay? So I think this is how this happened. Mike was married, okay? His first wife, her name was, I don't know, it's some redheaded chick. I can't remember her first name. But Mike must have let Mark teach some classes maybe when Mike was out of town for work or something like that. And Mark Yates ended up messing around and fucking Mike's wife. All right, so that's the type of dude that Mark Yates is, okay? So Mike is being nice enough to let you come to his house and train, okay? He probably wasn't even charging Mark because Mark was pretty decent. So then he lets Mark teach some classes, okay, to make sure people could still come there and train. And then he was staying after class and boning his wife. All right, that is super duper fucked up. I mean, at the end of it all, Mike Rooney should probably thank Mark for doing that because it exposed that dirty bitch that she was, and now Mike's remarried, and I'm sure I'm 100% sure she's a million times better than that fucking skank, for sure. And I don't even think, and then after Mike figured it out and they split up, Mark was still seeing her. So Mark left his, I don't think Mark was married, but he had a girlfriend and he had kids with her, okay? So he left that chick, okay, that he had kids with, and ended up getting with this redheaded stepchild. So That's some super fucked up shit. So that shows you the the moral compass this Mark Yates guy works under, okay? And I gave him tons of free private lessons. Like, I was really putting a lot of time into him because my goal was to open up this big gym, and I was going to have Mark be my assistant instructor. So he really stabbed me in the back. That's some super dirty shit. So now I want to talk about, because I'm trying to talk about my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts experience. I want to talk a little bit about I want to go back and talk about my school. So I started out teaching in this grappling club, okay, that I started. I just called it a grappling club because I didn't know nothing at this. I was paying rent for this out of this Taekwondo school. And after training with Roy Harris really taught me how to be a good instructor. I feel like I was a super good instructor. I had a really small gym. I worked a full-time job and did that just on the side. And I felt like I really built the confidence up in people. I had the first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts gym in Erie. I was the first MMA fighter, professional MMA fighter, to come out of Erie, Pennsylvania, and I feel like I did really good. And my schooling, I really felt like even if like I don't have my gym anymore, and I think a lot of people I had a falling out with, especially with the stuff I got charged with and stuff. But I'm willing to bet you, if people told the truth, I promise you that they would tell you that I did a lot of good for them. You know, I built people's confidence up. I was really good at building people's confidence up and making them mentally tough. I've had a lot of people come to me and like, you know, I came to you to get my confidence back. You know, I had some altercations out in the street and I was scared. I got punked out, or this or that happened, and I really turned these guys around and made them animals. And part of my routine, I was really proud about this. We started out the class, we'd start out doing stretches. We'd do stretches for like 15, 20 minutes, and that would give me an opportunity to talk to everyone. We would talk during the stretches, ask them questions. You know, I had some high school kids in there. Oh, how's school going? What's going on with school? You know, and sometimes they would tell me about some stuff that would happen in school, and I'd help them out. Some young kids, their parents came to me and told me they were getting picked on, and they wanted me to talk to them and kind of help them handle that, so I helped them handle that. I really built up the confidence in everyone, and I kind of did it. I did it through by building their mental toughness, and it started out from day one. I really preached, like, for example, like, I hate the phrase self-defense. Okay, I would use that when people would come in and, you know, talk about wanting to do classes. Oh, you know, I'm coming here to learn self-defense. And yeah, I'd be like, yeah, you know, I teach self-defense. But after they sign that contract and they start training, I tell everyone, look, I do not teach people how to defend themselves. I do not teach self-defense. I teach people how to fight. Okay, when you talk about self-defense, anytime someone says, oh, I defended myself, I had to defend myself, that sounds like you're the weaker person. Okay, that sounds like you're getting beat up. I do not want... I don't want anyone I'm training to feel like they're the weaker the person. I teach people how to fight. Okay, if someone attacks you, they're going to be the victim. Okay, you're not the victim. They're going to be the victim. You're going to turn the attacker into the victim. Okay, and I preach that big time. I would always say, look, I'm not teaching you guys self-defense. I'm teaching you guys how to fight. Okay, you're going to learn how to fight. And I was always big on that, talking about how to fight, you know. And you know, so I remember sometimes at my gym, I remember they talked about this one kid. His name was. A lot of my kids went to this high school called McDowell, and I remember this guy. His name was Paul Carpenter. Okay, this kid in high school, and they told me that he was getting picked on in school. So I was talking, I was like, hey, you know, don't let your friends, you know, they were telling me that their friends were picking on him. I was like, hey, don't let your friends pick on that kid. Like, that's fucking bullshit, you know. And I felt like my students didn't do enough. So I said, look, this is what I want you guys to do. For like a week or 2 weeks straight, I want you guys at lunch to go pick up his tray, offer to have him sit with you guys. And he doesn't have to sit with you guys. You can't make him. But if he doesn't sit with you guys, I don't care. I want you to keep an eye on him. And when you feel like he's almost done eating, I want you to say, hey, Paul, I just wanted to take your tray up. I want you to take his tray and throw it away and put his stuff away. I want you guys to do that for a couple weeks for him. And they're like, okay, all right, we did that. And once they did that, they told me that the kid was shocked, who was surprised, and the kid felt really good. And this kid ended up becoming friends with some of them. The kid never came to my class or anything like that, but that's the type of stuff that I would have my kids do. I didn't put up with any bullying, no bullshit like that. I made sure my kids acted right. And took care of each other. But I had a lot of tough fighters, man. I had this one girl fighter. Her last name was Zomchek, and man, she was super tough, man, super duper tough. I had a ton of good fighters. Danny Balon, Ben Quigley. He's an animal. I had a lot of tough fighters, man. Almost all my guys were good fighters. I had these boys called the Patterson brothers. Oh my God, they were tough as nails. Everybody, Bob Rack, he won a couple titles, man. Super duper tough dude. And, so I was just always preaching mental toughness. I always was like, you got to live and breathe this stuff. It starts from the very beginning. I was building up confidence in these guys. I was really proud of them. And a little bit about some MMA stuff is, I was crazy with MMA. I didn't see it as a sport. I was just seeing it as a street fight. It didn't, it didn't become mixed martial arts until my career was just about over. My last fight was, I think, in 2008. I fought. And this is funny, too, because everyone always talks about, oh, your record sucks. My record is 31 wins, 26 losses, and 3 draws, okay? Not all my fights are on the internet, okay? And people are going to say that, okay? I was fighting before they were keeping track of the fights, before there was even a body representing MMA and trying to keep track of the records and stuff like that. And a lot of my pro fights on my internet record are showing up as amateur, okay? Because it was legal in almost every state. So in order for me to fight pro in some of these states, I got paid for all my fights. The only way for them to pay me would be is if I signed a thing saying I fought amateur. So a lot of times when the athletic commissions were getting involved, it was a mess, okay? There was some states that had an athletic commission, most of them didn't. So you're going to all these different states to fight. So I got to the point where the athletic commission was cracking down. So they're like, you can't fight pro and then go into another state and fight amateur. We weren't really fighting amateur. We were just saying we were fighting amateur because they were trying to just fly low under the radar for the law, because for that state, the law might have said you're not allowed to pay people, you're not allowed to have professionals fight, but you can have amateurs fight. We got paid, okay? They just did it in a hotel room, give you cash and call it a day. So a lot of my fights, you'll see I jump back and forth from amateur to pro on MMA.tv, the record keeping thing. And that's, I was getting paid for those amateur fights. I'm just telling you. So, and also, I could fight at 135 pounds, and there really wasn't a lot of people around at that weight class, and some of them that wouldn't even fight me. So I was on the average fighting, probably at 155 pounds most of the time. Okay, so that's 2 weight classes above what my fighting weight was at. So how good do you think like people think Conor McGregor is really good? Okay. How Conor McGregor fights at 155 pounds. He might even have fought at 145 before. I can't remember, but I think he fought at 145 before. So imagine if Conor McGregor fought most of his fights at 170. What do you think his record would be? And then sometimes if he fought at 185. I fought a couple guys at 185 pounds. I actually won those fights. 2 of those fights, I lost one of them. I got beat up real bad this one. Fought this wrestler from Michigan. I can't remember his name, but we were talking major shit, and I thought I could beat him. I was overconfident. I just thought as long as I didn't have time limits, I was making up all kinds of rules. I'd make up rules. You know, the show would have 3 5-minute rounds, and I'd be fighting a guy like 3 10-minute rounds. It was crazy. I bet his coach $100 that I could make it out of the first round, and I won the $100, but then it got stopped after that. And I also fought at the time. I fought the 135 pound. I fought the pound for pound best fighter in the world. Okay, at that time that was Miguel Torres at 135 pounds. I think when I fought Miguel, I was only the second or third person to make the distance with him. His coach, I think it was Carlson Gracie Sr., he had like some $1 million fucking bet or something like that, that, you know, if anyone could beat this guy in a street fight, like a no holds barred Vale Tudo fight, he'd give you $1 million. And I know probably a couple people tried it, but you know, but that's how much confidence Carlson Gracie had in him. And at the time Miguel Torres was the pound for pound champ, they didn't have that weight class in the UFC. So the fact that a guy at 135 pounds, that they didn't have that weight class in the UFC, was considered Full Contact Fighter website was the one that was kind of the news website. They were trying to do a lot of the rankings and the record keeping, and they had Miguel Torres is listed as the pound for pound best fighter in the world. And if you even look Miguel Torres up, he's probably, I think they have him listed as the third best ever at that division. Okay, so at the time I fought Miguel Torres, I was paid $800. I went the distance with him, okay, and I did pretty good against him. Like, I feel like if I had a little better strategy, I think I would have beat him, but he beat me. I lost the decision, so I went the distance with the pound for pound best fighter in the world. So in today's standards, that would be like me going the distance with probably John Jones, okay? So that's the level of fighter I was. I was definitely top 5 in the world, maybe, you know, as I started to go towards the end of my career, top 10. I was definitely one of the best fighters in the world. I did crazy stuff. I also fought Roger Herta. He was the first UFC fighter to be on Sports Illustrated magazine. I did a crazy fight with him. So I agreed to fight this guy, Tommy Lee, in Chicago. Okay, and Tommy Lee was in the WEC. He was one of the best fighters in the world at the time too. He trained with that that real crazy guy in the UFC. I can't remember his name. I'm terrible with names. But so I agreed to fight this guy, Tommy Lee. Okay, and I was fighting to pay my bills then, man. I was just taking any fight to make money, and I loved fighting, so it was cool. So then I seen that Monty Cox was looking for a guy to fight Roger Herta because someone got hurt or someone bailed. So I called up Monty Cox. I said, "Hey, I'll fight Roger Herta," and I think he only paid me like $500 or something like that. But anyway, so he's like, "Yeah, okay," and he's like, "The fights, I think it was in Minnesota or Wisconsin," and he said, "I'll fly, you know, I'll get you on a flight. It'll pick you up in Cleveland, and then I'll fly you back." I was like, "Hey, can you do me a favor?" And he's like, "What?" I said, "Can you fly me into Chicago instead of flying me back to Cleveland?" And he's like, "Why?" I said, "Well, I'm taking a fight Saturday." So I was fighting Roger Herta on Friday, and then I was fighting Tommy Lee on Saturday. So, you know, and everyone knows Roger Herta's a beast, okay? So, and Tommy Lee's a beast too. So I was fighting these two guys back to back. And he's like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "That's going to be pretty rough. You know, I can understand if it was the same day, but that might be tough if you got to go the next day, you're going to be sore." I'm like, "I'm all right." I was like, I'll deal with it. He's like, "Okay." He's like, "It ain't no problem with me. You're fighting my guy first, so I don't care." But then the promoter from the Chicago fight, he found out I was doing that, and he called Monty. He's like, "Man, what the fuck, dude? You know what I mean? You know, why you letting him take that fight? You know, blah blah blah." And Monty's like, "Hey, man, look, I need someone to cover my fight. And he's fighting my guy first, so I'm not too worried about it. But Dan's a man of his word. If he says he's going to be there to fight that dude, I just have to assume he is. And he's like, oh fucking Christ! So I flew to Wisconsin or Minnesota, I can't remember which state it was, and fought Roger Herta. And the ref stopped the fight in the first or second round, I can't remember. Total bullshit stoppage. I actually think I caught him. Like, it was funny. And I also fought Roger Herta at 165 pounds too, okay, which is bullshit. We were supposed to fight at 155, and then I found out that he's having trouble making weight, so we fought at 165. I was fighting Tommy Lee the next day at 145, so I had to make weight for 145 too, because it was same day weigh-ins. So I was cutting a little bit of weight, so he had a huge weight advantage over me. If Roger Herta is cutting weight to make 165, that means he probably, when we fought, he was probably like 185 or 190 or something like that, maybe almost 200 pounds. And I'm still right around 148 pounds because I got to weigh in the next day. So I'm pretty sneaky on my southpaw. He threw this jab. I slipped this jab, and I threw this straight left, man. Popped him right in the face. And I just saw him get fucking angry as fuck that I caught him with that. And he kind of rushed me. So instead of trading blows with him, I just sat down to my back, and I hooked him. I got him in this heel hook, and I had it tight. And I'm trying to crank it, and he's standing up. He drags me from one end of the cage to the other. Finally gets out of this heel hook. I was so close to heel hooking him. And he gets on top of me, and I'm in half guard. So I'm kind of working like I got, I'm safe. I'm really tight underneath him, and I'm trying to work this sweep. But I was working it, but he's punching me like on the top of the head, the side of the head. It wasn't hurting at all. It wasn't hurting at all. And the ref literally stopped the fight. I looked up at him like, what the fuck, dude? What are you doing? He's like, oh, I thought, you weren't defending yourself. Yes, I was. I was getting ready to sweep him. I can't block punches that are landing on the top of my head and sweep them at the same time, dude. He wasn't even hurting me. But I was like, whatever. I probably wasn't going to win anyways, and I was just doing it for the money. So I was just like, whatever, dude. That's bullshit. It is what it is. So that was a bullshit stoppage. And then I went and I flew, got up the next day, early morning, flew to Chicago, got picked up at the airport. I had some people coming to meet me to work my corner and stuff. So my friends drove from Erie to Chicago to pick me up at the Chicago airport, drove me to the weigh-ins, and, I was fine. I didn't even get hurt during that Roger Herta fight. Nothing, not even a mark on my face. And, weighed in and fought Tommy Lee. Did good against him, but just, he just was just a little bit better than me. I lost a close decision to him. That was like one of the wild times, So I fought Miguel Torres. I fought Roger Herta, Tommy Lee. I also fought Jeff Curran, who was one of the best fighters in the world at 135 at the time too. Lost a close decision to him. Trying to think. Phil Johns. I fought Phil Johns. He was one of the first guys to fight at 155 pounds in UFC, and he was. I fought him at 155 pounds too. Okay, so remember that's 2 weight classes above what I'm supposed to, and I knew he was bigger than me, so I always tried to get longer rounds. I was in super good shape. My conditioning was super good, so we agreed to I think it was 5 or 6 5-minute rounds. So I fought him. The fight lasted 30 minutes. I lost a decision to him. That was a good fight. I fought a lot of tough dudes. I fought Donnie Walker. He was a UFC vet. I got totally hosed. I'll end up posting that video one day on YouTube. I got totally robbed. I beat his ass all 3 rounds. One judge scored it 30-28 in my favor because we fought 3 rounds, 30-28, and the other 2 scored it like 29-28. Total bullshit. I beat his ass. I fucking killed him. Like, the only way I could have did any more to him was if I literally stopped his heart. Got robbed with that. Almost was scheduled to fight Jason Dent. He was on the Ultimate Fighter reality show, fought in UFC. He did really good. He's fought a lot of tough dudes. He's a super tough dude. Was supposed to fight him like 3 or 4 times, and then just something happened. I got injured, he got injured, shit didn't happen. I was scheduled to fight him a bunch of times. Fought 60 MMA fights. That's how many MMA fights I had. And I was learning a lot of times during the fights, you know what I mean? I didn't really have a trainer, so I was trying to just figure it out as I was going. I was just addicted. I was just addicted to fighting. So that's in a nutshell. I'm sure I've forgotten more things than I can remember with that stuff, but I was a really good instructor. I really pride myself on my instruction, and I could teach someone anything from the top of the UFC level to the lowest UFC level. I can teach someone some shit. I know a lot of stuff, so I really enjoy teaching and doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts. So that's for my story for that. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And don't forget to subscribe and like my videos. I got like 80 some subscribers. I need 1,000 to make money at this. And I spent a lot of money on this equipment. So help me out and subscribe to my channel. Come on, guys. All right. Talk to you guys later.